Somewhere between the rise of the smartphone and the expansion of the internet, entire professions vanished from American life. Not with dramatic announcements or farewell ceremonies, they just quietly stopped existing. And the strange part is, most of us never noticed. We walked past the empty desks, the closed shops, the silent switchboards, and never paused to think about who used to be there. These were real jobs held by real people, sometimes for generations. And they did not fade because the workers failed. They faded because the world moved on without looking back. This is the story of 15 American jobs that disappeared while we were busy living our lives. Some of these might surprise you. Some might bring back memories of a world that operated very differently. Let's walk through them. The telephone operator was once one of the most common jobs in America. In the early and mid-20th century, making a phone call often meant speaking to a real person who physically connected your line to the person you were trying to reach. Switchboard rooms were filled almost always with women, sitting in long rows, plugging and unplugging cables at dizzying speed. These operators knew the voices of their regular callers. They could connect you to the police, help you reach a family member in another state, or simply tell you the time. When automated switching systems gradually replaced the manual boards, the operators disappeared floor by floor, building by building. By the time most Americans noticed, the last switchboard had already gone dark. The Iceman was essential to American households before electric refrigeration became standard. He would drive through neighborhoods with a horse-drawn cart and later a truck, delivering massive blocks of ice that kept food cold in wooden ice boxes. Families would place a card in the window indicating how many pounds they needed. Children chased the ice truck on hot summer days, hoping for chips of ice to cool off with. When affordable electric refrigerators became common in the 1940s and the 1950s, the Iceman's route simply stopped. There was no announcement. One summer he came, and the next he did not. The job quietly disappeared. The elevator operator once stood in every office building, department store, and hotel in America. They wore uniforms, white gloves, and operated a manual lever to stop the elevator at the correct floor. They greeted passengers, announced floors, and kept the rhythm of a building moving. The job required skill. Stopping level with the floor was an art. When automatic elevators arrived, building owners realized they could save money. The operators were let go quietly, replaced by buttons that anyone could press. Bowling pin setters were teenage boys and young men who sat behind the lanes in bowling alleys, manually clearing fallen pins and resetting them for the next frame. It was loud, physical, and sometimes dangerous work. A stray ball could catch you off guard. In the 1950s, automatic pin-setting machines were introduced, and the job evaporated almost overnight. The machines were faster, more consistent, and did not need brakes. The boys who once earned pocket money behind the lanes simply found other work or moved on. The lamplighter walked through city streets each evening, carrying a long pole to ignite gas street lamps one by one. At dawn, he returned to extinguish them. This job existed for over a century in American cities. The lamplighter was a familiar figure, almost romantic in the way he brought light to dark streets. Electric streetlights made the profession obsolete, but the transition was so gradual that most people never had a moment of realization that the lamplighter was gone. Before we continue through the rest of these forgotten professions, if you are enjoying this look back at the jobs and lives that built America, consider subscribing. There are many more stories about how the country changed in ways we barely noticed. The switchboard operator at a company was different from the telephone operator, but she met the same fate. Every business of any size had a receptionist who manually routed calls through an internal switchboard. She knew every extension, every department, every name. When automated phone systems with recorded menus replaced her, callers started pressing buttons instead of hearing a human voice. Customer service changed forever, and not everyone would say it changed for the better. The typesetter was the backbone of the newspaper and publishing industry. Before digital printing, every word in every newspaper, book, and magazine was arranged by hand or by machine, letter by letter, line by line. Typesetters were skilled workers who understood fonts, spacing, and layout at an almost instinctive level. Desktop publishing software in the 1980s and the 1990s made the craft unnecessary. Entire composing rooms went silent. The smell of hot lead type and printer's ink faded from American cities. The milkman delivered glass bottles of fresh milk directly to the doorstep before sunrise. Families left empty bottles out at night and found full ones in the morning. The milkman knew his customers by name, which families had new babies and who was away on vacation. Supermarkets with reliable refrigeration made home delivery unnecessary. The milkman's truck stopped coming, and most families barely registered the change. They simply started buying milk at the store. The video store clerk was a cultural authority in the 1980s and the 1990s. They knew every title on every shelf. They could recommend a film based on your mood, argue passionately about directors, and warn you away from terrible sequels. Friday nights in America meant a trip to the video store. The clerk would scan returns, rewind tapes, and help customers navigate thousands of choices. Streaming services did not replace the video store overnight. It happened slowly, then all at once. One day the shelves were full, the next the stores were closing. The travel agent once planned every vacation, every business trip, every honeymoon. Families would sit across the desk from someone who had brochures, booking systems, and personal experience with destinations. The travel agent handled flights, hotels, rental cars, and itineraries. Online booking platforms made it possible for anyone to plan their own trip. The travel agency storefronts in strip malls and on downtown streets went dark. Some agents survived by specializing, but the neighborhood travel agent became a memory. The film projectionist ran the movies. In theaters across America, someone sat in a small booth above the audience, threading film through a projector, monitoring the picture and the sound, and switching reels at precisely the right moment. A skilled projectionist could make the transition seamless. Digital projection eliminated the need for someone in the booth. The reels of film were replaced by hard drives and by satellite downloads. The projectionist's booth became a storage room. The log driver was essential in the lumber industry for over a century. Men would ride massive logs down rivers, guiding them with long poles and perfect balance as they moved timber from forests to sawmills. It was one of the most dangerous jobs in America. Men drowned, were crushed between logs, or were swept away in rapids. Trucks and railroads made river driving unnecessary, and the log drivers disappeared from American rivers without ceremony. The telegraph operator was once the fastest communicator in the country. Sending and receiving messages in Morse code required training, speed, and concentration. Telegraph offices existed in nearly every town. The telephone gradually replaced the telegraph, and the operators who had tapped out urgent messages for decades found their skills no longer needed. Western Union sent its last telegram in 2006, but the telegraph operator had been gone long before that. The human computer, long before electronic computers existed, was a person, often a woman, who performed complex mathematical calculations by hand. NASA and its predecessor organizations employed rooms full of human computers who calculated trajectories, fuel loads, and orbital mechanics. Their work was essential to the space program. Electronic computers replaced them not because they were less capable, but because machines could work faster and without rest. The human computers who helped put Americans into space were largely forgotten until their stories were rediscovered decades later. The pin setter, the lamplighter, the iceman, the switchboard operator. These were not just job titles. They were people who woke up every morning with purpose, who had skills they were proud of, who served their communities in ways that mattered. They did not disappear because they failed. They disappeared because progress moved in a direction that no longer needed them. What is remarkable about all 15 of these professions is how silently they vanished. There were no national conversations about their loss, no memorials, no transition programs in most cases. Americans simply adapted. We pressed our own elevator buttons, booked our own flights, streamed our own movies, and never looked back at who used to do those things for us. The disappearance of these jobs tells a larger story about how America changes, not through dramatic revolutions, but through slow, quiet shifts that accumulate until one day you realize the world you grew up in no longer exists. The people who held these jobs adapted too. They found new work, learned new skills, and moved forward. But something was lost with each profession that vanished. A human connection, a craft, a way of life that will not come back. For those who remember any of these professions, who remember the milkman at the door or the travel agent behind the desk or the projectionist in the booth, there is always more history to explore.